Hello, friend. Pull a chair up on the porch with me for a moment, before the kettle murmurs and the day begins its usual rush. I want to ask you something simple. Do you ever finish a meal feeling flushed in the face and heavy behind the eyes, like a slow tide pushing up from your neck? And then, an hour later, you're strangely sleepy, hunting for something sweet, or your heart is tapping a little harder than it was before lunch. Maybe you take your blood pressure at home and notice it edges up after dinner, or your glucose meter shows a bump that takes its time coming down. It's not you imagining things, it's your body having a very normal conversation with what you just ate. The trick is to answer that conversation with something small and friendly. Nothing fussy, nothing expensive, nothing that makes you feel like you live in a laboratory. 3 cups of the right tea, timed after meals and brewed at the right strength, can become a quiet lever for steadier pressure and calmer sugar. Not a cure, not a promise, just a habit that may help your next hour behave. Tea is just leaves or petals and hot water, yet it carries a lot of everyday medicine in the most old-fashioned American way. A cup in a hand, a chair by a window, steam that smells like a memory. When I say tea here, I mean 3 specific cups chosen for the moment they follow your plate. After breakfast, a gentle green tea that's not too strong. After lunch, a tart hibiscus that needs no sugar. After dinner, a caffeine-free spice or rooibos that warms but does not steal sleep. The timing is what turns flavor into practice. 20 to 40 minutes after you eat is a sweet spot for most people, long enough that you're not washing the meal straight through you, soon enough that you catch the post-meal wave when blood pressure and blood sugar like to drift. If iron runs low in your life, give yourself a little more room closer to an hour so you don't block the iron that plants offer. If you're not iron sensitive, and your evening meal leans salty, a sooner cup can be useful. Think of it as a tiny chaperone for the hour after a plate. The first cup lives in the morning next to your plate, not instead of it. Green tea, brewed light water, that's hot but not boiling. A short steep so it stays friendly, can walk beside breakfast like a good neighbor. Green tea simply means leaves that were heated before they browned. The result is a cup with catechins, plant helpers, that may nudge your body to handle sugar more gracefully. Gentle is the rule. A strong, bitter brew asks your stomach to negotiate, and anything too caffeinated can race a heart that's already meeting the day. You take your glass of water first, because your vessels, like honesty, you eat your protein, so appetite stops bossing you, and then the small cup sits down. This isn't drink tea and be saved. This is set your morning up so the rest of the day has better odds. Coffee still has a place if it's your ritual. Just let it share the table rather than push food and water off the stage. The lunch cup wears a red dress. Hibiscus isn't a heathered leaf from a far hillside. It's a flower calyx that turns water. A cheerful ruby and tastes like cranberry without the sugar. It's naturally caffeine-free. Many folks notice that a hibiscus cup in the early afternoon again, brewed reasonably strong but not puckering, helps the hour after lunch feel steadier, especially if the meal had bread, rice, or something from a deli counter that wasn't shy with salt. Blood pressure likes rhythm more than it likes heroics. Hibiscus is one way to hum that rhythm along. If the day is hot and loud, pour it over a few ice cubes and sip slowly. If the sky is grey and the heater clicks on, keep it warm and let the steam do part of the work of calming you. The third cup is about protecting your evening from your evening. Caffeine late in the day has a way of borrowing from your sleep and handing you the bill at 2 in the morning with a heart that won't settle. We choose rooibos, cinnamon bark, or ginger spice teas that carry warmth without the jolt. A small mug 30 to 60 minutes after dinner says 2 polite things to your body. Slow down the sugar coming through, and settle vessels that just held court with a restaurant plate or a second helping. Rooibos tastes like the middle of a wood shop and a honey jar had a conversation. Cinnamon says, bakery without adding sweetness. Ginger wakes your tongue without waking your nervous system. If salt and wine made an appearance at dinner, water sits beside this cup like a partner. If you're taking a diuretic in the morning, the evening cup stays modest, so you're not up all night visiting the bathroom and cursing the plan. Picture this in a person so it stops being theory. Meet Walt, 71, retired mail carrier, keeper of a practical porch. His doctor used the words pre-diabetes. His cough complained after supper's out, and he was tired of feeling like afternoons belonged to naps he didn't want. He did not become a different person. He kept his eggs and toast and his one beloved cup of coffee, but the coffee slid to the right side of breakfast instead of showing up alone, and a light green tea moved into the empty space coffee used to steal. He put a glass of water in the square of light on the counter, so his hand would find it before his brain invented reasons to forget. After lunch lately, a bowl with beans, cucumbers, and peppers, because he realized those things actually tasted good when he let lemon, pepper, and olive oil do the talking. He brewed hibiscus and sat by the window for 5 minutes while the street did its weekday routine. After dinner, he kept wine to one, placed water beside it, and ended with a small mug of cinnamon and rooibos. No sugar, no grand statement, just a warm thing to hold while he stretched his calves at the kitchen counter. 2 weeks later, he noticed the first change, not on a lab slip, but in the fact that his belt wasn't threatening mutiny at bedtime. The cuff was kinder after dinner. His glucose checks looked less like hills and more like rolling country. He didn't brag because he didn't feel like he'd accomplished anything special. He'd simply given 3 hours of his day a purpose they'd been missing. If you're measuring at home, and I hope you are, because healthy aging is easier when you see your own weather, a simple rhythm makes the story visible. Sit a minute before you measure. Feet flat, arms supported. Note your pre-meal number now and then, not every hour like a nervous bird. Note the hour, after number a couple times a week. The goal isn't to chase a decimal. It's to learn that dinner with a salty sauce lands differently than dinner with herbs and lemon, that a gentle tea and a short walk after the plate can shave the sharpness off the curve. Blood sugar behaves with the same logic. You do not need to become a spreadsheet. A small notepad that says, deli sandwich, iced hibiscus, more lap, felt steady, tells you more than any lecture. A word about drugstore shelves and the teas that don't play nice. Licorice tea, real licorice with glycyrrhizin, not the natural flavor that tastes like a candy store, can raise blood pressure and throw off potassium. It's a no in a house that's trying to soothe vessels. Stimulant blends that brag about energy belong to other decades. Strong matcha, or very concentrated green tea, is a sometimes if you take a blood thinner, because powdered leaves carry vitamin K that the water alone barely holds. If you're on warfarin, keep your green tea habits steady, and talk to your clinician before you change the script. If you have reflux that barges in after anything tannic, keep steep times short, pick gentler leaves, or lean on rooibos and ginger, which usually mind their manners. If you take iron for anemia, don't marry your supplement to your tea, give them a few hours apart. If you take a diuretic in the morning, resist the temptation to make evenings all about fluids. Your sleep is part of your blood pressure plan. Tea is not the only actor on the stage. Lights matter. Screens borrow sleep the way late coffee does, and a brain that thinks it's noon at midnight kills appetite in the morning, which pushes lunch later, which pushes dinner bigger, which pushes your post-meal pressure up like a curtain you didn't mean to raise. Let a lamp be the last light. Let the sky be the first. Coffee belongs at the table, not instead of it. A cup beside protein helps. A cup that steals breakfast doesn't. Salt belongs to flavor, not to habit. Let pepper, lemon, garlic, and herbs take more of the speaking parts. Walk a little after you put your fork down. I don't mean laps and a stopwatch. I mean mailboxes and a dog that tilts its head when it sees you again. The calf muscle is a pump. Each step opens tiny vein doors upward so blood returns to the heart instead of lounging around your ankles. Vessels like movement as much as they like minerals. Prevention beats repair because prevention is built of acts so small, you can keep doing them on days when your patience is thin. Whispers are worth learning so you know when to nudge the plan and when to make a phone call. A whisper looks like a flushed face after meals, a sudden yawn that feels more like chemistry than boredom, a post-dinner cough that drifts higher than your morning numbers, a jitter after sweet tea or dessert that you call nerves, but which is more likely a sugar swing. Those are invitations for water before your next meal, a lighter hand with salt, a smaller bowl that still feels like a bowl, and your after-plate cup, brewed the way we talked about green in the morning if you like it. Hibiscus after lunch, spice or rooibos at night, plus a short walk. Red flags live in a different room. If your pressure jumps into the crisis range and refuses to come down, If chest pressure arrives like a boot on your sternum, if breath becomes work at rest, if speech tangles or one side of your face feels foreign, if your sugar meter reads in numbers that make your hands shake or you feel confused and sweaty without explanation, those are reasons to seek urgent care now. Calm is not waiting. Calm is moving in the right direction without drama. I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned that people don't change because of charts. They change because of scenes they can step into. Here's one I hope lands in your kitchen tomorrow. The toast pops. The egg hisses gently in a pan. The sun finds the corner of your table that still knows how to hold a newspaper. You place a glass of water there and finish it because it's right where your hand expects it to be. You eat breakfast and then pour hot water that's steaming but not boiling over a teaspoon of green tea in a little strainer. You watch the colour drift into the cup and pull the leaves before the brew gets cross. You take 3 actual minutes to sit with it. Your phone is not invited. Hours later, lunch is unremarkable. In the best way. A bowl with beans and cucumber and peppers, a squeeze of lemon, a stretch of bread if it belongs to you. 20 minutes after, a cup of hibiscus blushes in your glass. You sip it while you look out at the flag a neighbour hung a decade ago that still snaps at the same wind. Evening comes and dinner is not a performance. It's a plate that belongs in your house. You let the conversation at the table be louder than the salt shaker. You keep wine to a story instead of a subplot. Then you make a small mug of cinnamon and rooibos, warm enough to fog the inside of the cup, and you stretch your calves against the counter while the kettle clicks. The lamp finishes the day. Your phone sleeps in the kitchen. You go to bed, and the hours after a plate behave like hours that belong to you. None of this replaces your clinician or the tests that help you see the whole picture. If you've been told you have high blood pressure or sit in that space for diabetes, expect and welcome simple checks that anchor your routine. An A1C that shows a 90-day average for sugar, a fasting glucose or an occasional post-meal check if you monitor at home, a lipid panel that cares about your heart's future, kidney numbers that tell how your filter is feeling, and, if needed, an EKG or a 24-hour monitor that watches pressure in the wild instead of asking one clinic moment to represent your whole life. Bring your little diary. The best doctor advice for seniors starts with your details and ends in your handwriting, not in a generic pamphlet. I'll end where I love to end, with the promise that small, pleasant things done on purpose can change what the next hour feels like. A cup is a prop in that story. Not a miracle, not a fix, just a warm, good-tasting nudge in the direction you were already hoping to go. If you've been looking for natural remedies that feel like they belong in an American kitchen, this is one. If you've been hunting for longevity tips that don't require special shoes or a teenager to set up an app, this is one. If you want daily habits for healthy aging that sit in your hands and make sense to your tongue, this is one. You won't get a medal for it. You will get, if you keep at it, afternoons that need fewer naps and nights that don't argue with your pillow. If this met you where you live, tell the friend who always orders sweet tea with lunch and wonders why he fades at 2. Send it to the sister who swears her pressure hates restaurants but keeps trying to wrestle it with willpower alone. Share it with the neighbor who believes health has to taste like suffering. And if you'd like to keep walking this road with me, porch to kitchen to table tap subscribe so the next chapter finds you without you having to chase it. The kettle is already learning your name. The reason a cup can change an hour is simpler than the labels on the box. After you eat, your body does beautiful, predictable things. Blood flows toward your stomach and intestines because digestion is work. Insulin steps out to shepherd sugar into cells. Blood vessels open and close in a quiet dance, so pressure stays steady while energy moves to where it's needed. When you're over 70, and especially if you're living with high blood pressure, or that not yet diabetes space, your clinician calls pre-diabetes. The guardrails get closer together. The same plate that used to be a shrug can now tug your numbers up or down for an hour or two. Food high in refined starches gives sugar a fast lane. Salty restaurant sauces pull extra fluid into the bloodstream and can nudge pressure higher. A long, still evening after a big dinner leaves blood pooling in your legs and a heart that has to push harder against the quiet. Tea, used well, is not a spell. It is a gentle nudge on those same levers, vessels, insulin sensitivity. stomach emptying at the exact window when the meal has the most influence. Start with the chemistry in neighbourly English. Green tea is simply a leaf that was warmed before it could brown, that keeps more of its native helpers' catechins intact. Catechins are plant compounds that act a bit like traffic officers at a busy intersection. They can help blood vessels relax by encouraging the body's own nitric oxide signal, and they can make your muscles a little more willing to listen to insulin's knock. Brewed lightly after a breakfast that includes protein, green tea may help the post-meal sugar bump look like a hill instead of a cliff, and the pressure drift behave like a small tide instead of a storm surge. Hibiscus is not a leaf at all, but the deep red calyx of a flower. It tastes like cranberry without the sugar and comes without caffeine. Its pigments, anthocyanins, may support vessels in relaxing a notch, and, for some people, lend a modest hand in taming the salt effect of a deli sandwich or a soup you didn't cook. Rooibos is a needle-like plant from the legume family that brews rust-red and sweet on its own. It has no caffeine and carries a compound called aspalathin that in small, human ways may make a glucose rise less dramatic. Cinnamon and ginger don't burn fat or melt sugar, despite the internet's confidence, but they can slow how fast a meal leaves your stomach and keep the hour after curve from spiking quite as high. If you think of tea as a tiny chorus behind a plate that already makes sense, you'll use it right. Timing is the hinge. Drink too soon and you're just washing food through yourself before your gut has had a chance to work. Drink too late and the wave has already crested. The quiet, sweet spot is 20 to 40 minutes after you put your fork down. That's when digestion has begun but not finished. And when a warm cup plus a short walk has an outsized say in how the next hour behaves. If iron runs on the low side for you, your clinician has circled ferritin or hemoglobin before, give yourself closer to 60 minutes between a meal rich in plant iron and any tea, because tannins can make iron more shy about being absorbed. If mornings are where your pressure tends to misbehave, start your day the same way a good town starts a parade. Water first, then food, then a light green tea that knows its place, and save coffee to sit alongside breakfast, instead of stealing its chair. You can learn more from your own kitchen than from any study abstract. Use a simple log like you'd use a grocery list. Short, plain, and honest. Write your pre-meal pressure a few times a week after you've sat a minute, with your arms supported, feet flat, no talking. Note when you drank water. Then mark the hour after number once or twice a week. Scribble a few words about the plate. Deli turkey on roll, chips, sweet tea. Tells a different story than beans, cucumber, pepper bowl, lemon, olive oil. Add 2 small details. Hibiscus, 20 minutes, unsweetened, and more lap 8 minutes. Or green tea strong, felt jittery. Over 10 to 14 days, patterns appear the way a sunrise reveals dust in a window. You'll see which lunches ask your vessels to work harder, which dinners sleep better beside a spiced tea, and how a short, slow walk changes the numbers more than you thought it could. You do not need to be perfect or scientific. You need to be consistent enough to teach yourself your life. American habits push these levers without saying a word, which is why we fold tea into the very places those habits live. Coffee is culture. Keep it, but teach it manners. A cup that sits beside breakfast behaves. A cup that replaces breakfast steals appetite, shoves lunch into the afternoon, and grows dinner until salt and sugar arrive in a parade. Screens are modern light. They tell your brain it's noon at midnight. The hormones that shape appetite, thirst, and vessel tone, things that matter when you're thinking about senior wellness and heart health for elderly adults, listen to light more than any sermon. When you park your phone in the kitchen and let a lamp be the last light, you hand the morning back to yourself. You'll be hungry at the right time, you'll drink earlier, and your after-meal numbers will follow the calmer day you just designed. Not all teas belong in a blood pressure plan. Real licorice tea, the kind made from glycyrrhiza root, and not the natural flavor that just tastes like a candy store, can raise blood pressure and lower potassium trouble you don't need. Skip it. Very strong green tea or matcha, especially in large amounts, carries more vitamin K than a light brew. If you take warfarin, you don't have to avoid green tea, but you do need to keep your habits steady and tell your clinician if you're changing them, because warfarin dosing is a dance with vitamin K. If your life includes reflux, Tannins can be bossy. Keep steep times short and lean on rooibos and ginger more at night. If you take an iron supplement, don't marry it to your cup. Separate them by a couple of hours. If you're on a morning diuretic, a giant evening pot of anything is a promise to your bladder that will come due at 2 a.m. Keep the dinner cup small, so sleep can do what it does for healthy aging, better than any beverage can. Let's make this real with two ordinary stories. Alma is 76, sings alto in the church choir, checks her pressure because her sister worries, and calls herself a tea person because she always has been. Her numbers like to climb after choir potlucks and family dinners. Her fingerstick sugars drifted into the 140 seconds and 150 seconds, an hour after lunch more often than she wanted to admit. She didn't want a chart. She wanted to sing and cook and not feel scolded by a cuff. She started brewing a light green tea after breakfast instead of starting the day with sweet tea, swapped her noon sweet tea for hibiscus without sugar, and set a spiced tea beside her plate after dinner when the choir gathered. She kept a pencil log for 2 weeks, with 7 words per meal. Roast chicken, green beans roll, hibiscus, 25 minutes, 6-min walk. The change she loved most wasn't on paper. It was the way her face stopped flushing at the table and the way she didn't need a nap after rehearsal. The numbers nodded later, and her clinician circled them with a smile instead of a frown. Marcus is 70, retired bus mechanic, big laugh, big dinners, bigger grandkids. He sits in that pre-diabetes box and would like to walk out. He likes black tea the way his father liked it. Strong enough to hold a spoon upright, and he drinks it with dinner because it feels like home. He also sleeps badly and wakes with a heart that unthreads itself before his second step. He didn't want to give up the cup. He agreed to move it. He kept black tea with lunch on days he made a sandwich and swapped his dinner mug for rooibos with a cinnamon stick. He left the heavy tannins and the caffeine in the afternoon where they belong. He learned to brew lighter so his stomach didn't argue. He started taking an 8-minute lap around the block after he put the fork down because the dog down the street cocks his head in a way that made him laugh. His nights stopped borrowing from his mornings. His after-dinner checks stopped looking like a hilltop. He still makes his father's tea. He just tells it what hour it gets to sing. Whispers and sirens are the difference between a plan and a problem. A whisper tells you your plan needs a nudge. Look for a face that gets warm after a plate. A cuff that reads 10 or 15 points higher after dinner than it did before. A sugar check that climbs and lingers past an hour. A jitter you keep calling nerves, when it shows up after sweet drinks or dessert. Those whispers answer to water before the meal. A plate that leans on protein and vegetables more than starch. A shorter pour of salt. A small cup at the right time after eating. And a slow walk. Sirens are different. Pressure in a crisis range that doesn't come down when you sit. Chest pressure that spreads. Breath that becomes work at rest. Slurred speech. A drooping smile. Confusion with sweaty shakiness if you're on glucose-lowering medication. Those are reasons to seek urgent care now. Calm is not denial. Calm is knowing which door to walk through. Because this channel is about senior health that lives in American kitchens, not in laboratories, I want to show you where tea meets the rest of a day that works. Morning opens with a glass of water because that's how vessels hear honesty. Breakfast is a bowl you finish without a fight, skyr with a spoon of peanut butter and peach slices, or eggs with a handful of spinach if your iron is fine and you love it, or eggs with shredded cabbage if spinach makes your numbers loud. Coffee sits beside the plate and stops acting like a bulldozer. A light green tea follows 20 minutes later. 2 minutes in water that is hot but not boiling is enough. You face the window for a minute, so your brain sees morning. This isn't detox. This is giving your inner clock the same kind of cues a farmer gives a field light at the right time. Water at the right time. Work that suits the day. Lunch doesn't need a ceremony. It needs a bowl that doesn't push your 2 o'clock over a cliff. Beans, cucumber, peppers, lemon, olive oil, a warm roll if that's your lane, and a small protein portion keeps sugar from slamming and pressure from climbing and appetite from demanding a 9 p.m. raid on the pantry. 20 to 30 minutes later, hibiscus is a shade of red you can see from across the room. If it's summer, pour it over a few ice cubes and sit by a fan. If it's winter, hold it long enough that steam gives you something to watch. Walk a store aisle or the hallway for 5 to 8 minutes, and let your calves do the magic trick they're built for, pushing blood back toward your heart through one-way doors that only open when muscle squeezes. Dinner is the loudest chapter in most American days. You lower the volume with choices that say, home, without shouting salt or sugar, fish or chicken or tofu in a reasonable portion, green beans that squeak under lemon, a cabbage wedge roasted until its edges turn sweet, barley or rice, or potatoes that were boiled before they were crisped, so the potassium load doesn't become a surprise for your kidneys. Tomato shows up as a ribbon, not a flood. Half roasted red pepper, half tomato, blended with garlic and herbs. Wine sits beside water because water is the grown-up at the table. 30 to 60 minutes later, a small mug of rooibos with a cinnamon stick and a thumb of ginger wins the hour back from dessert. If you want sweetness, let the cinnamon bluff your tongue into thinking it got what it asked for. If someone made pie, have 2 polite bites and a longer walk. Your clinician's office is where you bring what you learned so it can be aimed, not where you get scolded for not being a robot. Expect simple tests that make sense of the last 3 months. A 1C shows a 90-day average for sugar. It doesn't need perfection to improve. A fasting sugar, and, if you're checking at home, a few post-meal values show how a plate changes an hour. A lipid panel, because your vessels matter as much as your meter, and we're playing a long game for longevity tips that are real. Kidney numbers, creatinine, and eGFR are an early warning system and a way to catch trouble before it's dramatic. Sometimes you'll see a microalbumin test, the quiet leak that tells us to be kinder to filters. If your pressure acts one way in the office and another at home, a 24-hour monitor can tell the truth without anyone trying to impress anyone. Bring your log. Hibiscus after lunch helped on deli days is a sentence that makes a plan, not a vibe. Safety belongs in your kitchen as much as flavor does. Keep caffeinated teas earlier in the day, unless you are one of the lucky few whose sleep ignores them. If reflux lives with you, keep steeps short and drink warm, not scalding. If you bruise easily or your clinician checks your clotting medicines often, say out loud what and when and how much you drink, because even small vitamin K shifts or tannin timing can matter when you're on warfarin. If your diuretic, blood pressure pill, or sugar medicine timing leaves you lightheaded at the sink or shaky 30 minutes after dinner, don't white-knuckle it. Bring that sentence exactly to your next visit. They'll move a dose or a clock so the plan belongs to your life. You'll find that the real win isn't the cup. It's the way the cup makes you sit down and put a friendly fence around the hour after you eat. Those 5 minutes in a chair by a window, no TV, no tablet. Just steam and a street, calm the nervous system that tells your vessels how tight to hold and your heart how fast to beat. The short walk that follows is not a workout. It is a signal to your veins that gravity doesn't get the last word. The plate you put on the table most nights is not a performance. It is a conversation with a body that does better with routine than with heroics. That is the heart of a healthy lifestyle for seniors. It is ordinary. It is repeatable. It is how you reverse chronic disease naturally, only in the sense that you stop making it worse by accident. I'll end with a scene I want for you, not because it's dramatic, but because it isn't. A small kettle clicks off. A cup warms your palm. You watch steam trace the same path it traced yesterday and will trace tomorrow. Someone you love says something from the other room and you answer without getting up because nothing urgent is happening, and that is its own kind of luxury. The cuff on the table is there if you want to check, but you don't need to today because your body already told you you're steady, the way your head feels clear, the way you don't need something sweet to keep you interested in your own afternoon, the way the house sounds like itself. You built that feeling from small things. You can keep building it. And when the big things in life arrive, as they do, you will meet them with a day that knows its steps. If this helped you picture exactly when and how a cup can help, tell someone who says, "My pressure hates restaurants," but doesn't yet know what to do in the hour after dinner. Share it with the neighbor who still keeps sweet tea as a default and wonders why 2 o'clock feels like quicksand. Send it to the cousin trying to figure out how to live longer after 70 without giving up the flavors that make life worth living. Like it if it met you where you live. Subscribe so the next porch to kitchen chapter finds you without you having to chase it. And set a cup and a glass where the light will find them tonight. Tomorrow will thank you with the kind of boring middle of the day you can build a life on. Personal routine is where this whole tea idea grows legs. And it has to fit the house you live in, not the one in glossy pictures. Imagine the day not as a list of rules, but as a loop you can trace with one finger. Plate, cup, breath, a little motion, notes in the margins, sleep that behaves, morning that doesn't bite. Start with the place your feet know best. If you wake to a flight of stairs and knees that file complaints, the answer isn't to conquer the staircase at dawn. The answer is to give your calves and thighs a say without picking a fight. A sturdy chair near a window becomes your small gym. Before breakfast, sit tall and march your knees up toward your hands for a minute. Slow and deliberate. The movement asks blood in the lower legs to move north without bothering your joints. Stand once and sit once. 5 slow times, feeling your thighs catch you on the way down. Hold the counter and press one heel back until the calf lengthens, knee soft, then switch sides. If balance is fussy, keep both hands on the counter and let the stretch be a whisper, not a sermon. These minutes aren't a workout. They're circulation practice, so your vessels and sugar have partners when that morning cup arrives 20 minutes after the plate. Morning plates can be friendly without being fussy. If eggs have always been your anchor, let them stay, but give them a softer landing than a stack of white toast. Finely shred cabbage or zucchini, and let it tumble into the skillet first with a little olive oil and pepper. Fold the eggs over that instead of a tomato flood, so you keep potassium calm and reflux quiet. If dairy is your lane, spoon skyr or Greek yogurt into a bowl. Swirl in a tablespoon of peanut or almond butter for staying power. Slice in a peach or half a banana, if those fruits are your friends. And scatter pumpkin seeds on top for crunch. The protein steadies sugar, and the fat tells appetite to behave. If you avoid dairy, blend a cottage cheese cousin with a plant milk you tolerate or go straight to silken tofu. Yes, really whirled with frozen cherries and a dab of vanilla until it tastes like a milkshake that grew up. Coffee sits beside these bowls, not instead of them. A light green tea, 2 minutes, water hot but not boiling, shows up 20 minutes later and behaves like a chorus, not a lead singer. If you take a morning blood pressure pill or diuretic, keep food in front of it and water in your glass so you don't meet lightheadedness at the sink. The shower waits until you've eaten, because stacking hot water on an empty stomach and medicines that lower pressure is exactly how knees and tile meet in the worst way. Apartments and winters are where good plans go to die if they depend on sidewalks. So you write a winter script. Lights on early. You face a window for a minute while the kettle warms so your brain hears morning, even if the sky doesn't look interested. Your hallway becomes a boulevard. Set a playlist to a song you love and walk until the chorus. Turn, repeat. A big box store is a park with a roof at 8 a.m. Push a cart for balance and do a loop past laundry and paper goods. Not because you need anything, but because the floor is smooth and your calves are pumps that open one-way vein doors upward with every step. Between those loops, tea does its quiet work. Green after breakfast if you enjoy it. Hibiscus after lunch. Spice or rooibos after dinner. Caffeine stays earlier. Sleep is your best friend for pressure and sugar, and screens are the cousin who loves to ruin your evening. If a tablet has become your midnight company, make it a kitchen sleeper. Lamps end the day more honestly than blue light. If a cane is your companion, let it live in the hand opposite the knee or hip that fusses. That one change steadies your gait and saves energy for the laps that actually help your numbers. If you roll with a walker, treat it like a moving porch bench, not a burden. Set the brakes, stand tall, release, and walk the length of a favorite verse. Sit when you want. Your veins don't grade you on distance. If a wheelchair is your frame, point and flex your feet. Draw small circles at the ankles, straighten one knee at a time, and hold for a count while the heel floats. Those movements invite blood north, and tell your sugar that muscle is paying attention. In every setup, the cup becomes a time anchor. Finish breakfast, then green tea. Finish lunch, then hibiscus. Finish dinner, then spice or rooibos. If reflux lives in your house, steep gently and drink warm instead of hot. Rooibos and ginger usually mind their manners better than strong leaves when your esophagus is in a mood. Personal tastes deserve a place on the shelf because pleasure is what keeps habits alive. If green tea tastes like lawn clippings to you, you haven't done something wrong. You need a lighter steep or a different leaf. Jasmine pearls are gentler. A hojicha, roasted green, is perfectly calm and lower in caffeine, and a weak oolong can fill the morning slot beautifully if you keep it modest. If hibiscus is too tart, balance it with a squeeze of orange, or steep it with a cinnamon stick and 2 slices of apple, so the cup tastes like someone baked, without the sugar that would tip your meter. If rooibos feels thin, add a finger of ginger and a fragment of cinnamon bark. Let it sit just long enough that the kitchen smells like a bakery met a woodshop. If you love black tea because a parent did, keep it earlier in the day, brew it lighter, and treat the evening as rooibos territory. None of this is about purity. It's about ours having jobs they can actually do. Medications sit at this table, not on a separate spreadsheet, because timing and tea are colleagues. Blood pressure protectors like ACE inhibitors or ARBs are champions for your heart and kidneys. They can nudge potassium up, which makes tomato floods a poor evening habit, and makes those post-meal cups, the walk, and a smarter plate that leans less on salt more important. Diuretics shed sodium and extra water so ankles stop arguing with shoes. Taken on a coffee, only morning, and followed by a very hot shower, they can leave you woozy and dry. The choreography that fixes that is small. Water before coffee, food before pill, shower after. Beta blockers can blunt heart rate. Short walks still count, maybe even more than before. Because they don't ask your heart to sprint, they ask your calves to pump. If you take metformin or a sulfonylurea for sugar, the hour after tea is your ally, but so is the protein on the plate in the first place. If shakes or sweats arrive an hour after dinner, that is not a tea problem. That is a call your clinician so they can trim a dose or move a clock problem. If warfarin has a place in your pillbox, you don't need to fear green tea. You need to keep your habits steady and tell the clinic if you change it so the dosing dance keeps time. If you take an iron tablet, let tea and iron live in different hours. They are neighbors who gossip if you seat them together. There are weeks when life cooks your schedule for you, and the plan still has to taste like your house. Caregiving days that stretch into evening become bowl nights. Keep cooked beans or lentils in the fridge, cucumbers and peppers washed, lemons ready. Pile beans, chopped vegetables, herbs, and olive oil into a bowl and call it lunch that won't break your numbers at 2. Brew hibiscus, sit for 4 minutes, then walk the hallway while a kettle whispers for someone else's tea. Dinner can be assembly, not performance. A piece of fish or tofu, green beans that squeak under lemon, a cabbage wedge roasted until its edges turn sweet, barley or rice if they belong to you. Then a small spiced tea seals the hour. Put your phone to sleep in the kitchen, let the lamp end the day, and you'll wake hungry enough to eat breakfast instead of starting with caffeine and chasing appetite until dinner gets bigger than it needs to be. Food swaps are how you keep your favorites without inviting pressure and sugar to misbehave. If you grew up with sweet tea, try making a half and half jug with hibiscus and water, unsweetened, and add orange slices to fool your tongue into thinking someone added sugar. If your sandwich loves pickles and chips, make the pickles a cameo and slide in cucumbers and bell peppers for crunch. Chips become a small handful, not a bowl, and you pay yourself back with a hibiscus cup and a quiet 8-minute walk. If you crave dessert after dinner, put cinnamon and ginger in your rooibos so your tongue hears bakery and your pancreas hears, we're fine. If restaurant dinners defeat you, order the grilled or baked protein and the vegetable sides that don't swim in sauce. Ask for sauces on the side and use them as accents, not blankets. Drink water at the table. Keep wine to a story you can tell later. And let the evening cup be the thing you do for yourself, not the thing that keeps you up. Weight is not a moral story here. It is a physics one. A protein. Forward breakfast lets you arrive at lunch with a steadier appetite and better glucose, which keeps dinner reasonable. Reasonable dinners mean you do less late-night grazing. Less late-night grazing means sleep behaves, and sleep is the quiet governor that makes blood pressure medicine work better and sugar wake up with manners. Tea fits because it anchors those moments without adding calories you didn't mean to drink or caffeine that borrows from your night. If the scale moves, it often does so not because tea burned anything, but because your day stopped borrowing from itself. That is still a win, and a bigger one than any headline will admit. Safety deserves a clear voice. Caffeine is a tool. Most older bodies do better when it clocks out by early afternoon. If you notice your heart tapping too fast, or sleep fraying at the edges after cups that used to sit quietly, downshift. Make green tea weaker or shorter steeped. Push black tea into the morning, and let afternoons and evenings belong to hibiscus, rooibos, cinnamon, and ginger. If you develop new chest pressure, breath that is work at rest, a headache with vision changes that laughs at acetaminophen, speech that tangles, or a droop on one side of the face, these are not tea problems. These are seek urgent care now signals. If your meter shows very high or very low sugars with confusion, shakiness, or sweating, that's a medication and meal timing conversation with your clinician, not a chance to add another herbal blend. A cup is a helper. It is not a cure. Because this is your life, not a clinic handout. Here is a day that lives in an American house in February or July and still works. The sun is a rumor behind clouds. You stand by the window anyway, and let that rumor touch your eyes for a minute. A glass empties on the counter, where the lamp always finds it. Breakfast happens in a bowl you can build without thinking. Skyr with peanut butter. Peach slices from a jar you like. Pumpkin seeds. Coffee sits and behaves. 20 minutes later, a light green tea warms your hand. You take a hallway lap because ice owns the sidewalk, humming a verse only you know. Lunch is the bowl that saved your Tuesday beans, cucumbers, peppers, herbs, lemon, olive oil, a warm roll and a hibiscus cup shows up like a little ruby to finish the hour. You walk 2 slow aisles at the store and talk to the produce like it can hear you. Dinner is an ordinary triumph, green beans with lemon, roasted cabbage that tastes like a secret, a fillet of salmon or a square of tofu, a spoon of barley, a ribbon of roasted pepper and tomato sauce. Water sits beside your glass of wine, which you keep to one because you like mornings. 40 minutes later, a small rooibos with cinnamon sits beside a counter where you stretch your calves while the kettle ticks. Your phone sleeps in the kitchen because you do better when it does. You go to bed without a speech about willpower because none of this felt like a fight. If you're the kind of person who likes to bring proof to a visit and bless you, if you are, bring the simple facts. A1C is your 90-day average for sugar. It doesn't need brilliance to improve, only repetition. A fasting sugar or an occasional hour after value at home tells you how plates and cups change a day. A lipid panel lives on the same street as pressure. Both talk about your vessel future. Kidney numbers, creatinine and EGFR are a filter report. They matter, and they like it when salt stops shouting and when caffeine sleeps at night. If you and your clinician suspect the cuff at home tells a different story than the one in the office, a 24-hour monitor can settle the argument without anyone changing their personality. If you notice pressure that surges with restaurant meals and calms with water, a walk, and hibiscus, say that sentence out loud. It is the kind of detail that turns a lecture into a plan. If you take warfarin, say what kind of tea you drink and how often. Consistency is the key, not fear. If you take a diuretic and the morning makes you dizzy, say it that way. Timing is a wrench, not a guess. For the person who says, "But I'm not a tea person," remember that this isn't about liking leaves. It's about putting a small, pleasant boundary around the hour after you eat, so the plate's influence lands the way you want it to. Warm water with lemon can carry you if it must. A cinnamon stick in hot water has more power than you think because it changes what your mouth expects from dessert. Ginger slices wake your tongue and settle your stomach without a single milligram of caffeine. The practice matters more than the plant. You're teaching your body which door to take when a meal ends, the one that leads to a steadier hour. For the person who loves sweet tea and thinks unsweetened is a punishment, make a pitcher that meets your tongue halfway. Brew hibiscus and water together, drop in orange slices and 2 strawberries, and chill it. The fruit perfumes the cup, enough that your brain forgives the missing sugar. Pour it over ice in a tall glass. Sit by the window and call someone you like for 5 minutes. If you come from a house where black tea lives in the kettle and milk and sugar always followed, move that habit to lunch and make the spoon shallower. Keep evenings for the rooibos that taste like the memory without the midnight consequences. You are not betraying a tradition. You're giving it hours that make sense for a body that has earned the right to be handled kindly. I want you to picture the porch again, but in a different season and with different shoes by the door. It's July. The flag barely moves and the air presses. You drink water first because you always do now. Breakfast is fruit and yogurt and something with protein that tastes like summer. Lunch leans light but honest. Hibiscus sits over ice in a glass that sweats a little ring on the table. Dinner smells like garlic and lemon and a grill you refuse to give up. The plate is green beans and a tomato cameo and a reasonable piece of chicken or fish, with a scoop of rice that kept its manners. Rooibos arrives like sunset. You walk the cul-de-sac once because the dog down the street expects you to admire him. Or it's January. You make the same decisions indoors because you built your house to help you. In both months, the meter and the cuff stop surprising you. They still change, but they change inside a corral you drew on purpose. None of this comes with a guarantee, and it shouldn't. It comes with odds that move in your favor. When the day gets a shape you can keep. Your numbers will still have weather. So will your life. Holidays will land on your table with pies that smell like memory, and restaurant soups will flirt with your salt goals, and travel will hand you a breakfast bar designed by a committee that never met your body. Your job isn't to be perfect. It's to bring the shape back the next meal and the next hour. Tea helps because it's small and pleasant and timed. Movement helps because calves are pumps and veins are doors, and gravity is bossy unless you tell it otherwise. Breakfast helps because dinner behaves when morning shows up with food. Sleep helps because hormones listen to lamps and windows like they were old hymns. The rest labs and pills and plans belongs to a conversation with your clinician that you lead by bringing the life you actually live into the room. If this felt like a map you could put in a kitchen drawer and pull out on a Tuesday, that's on purpose. Share it with the neighbor who says, "My pressure hates restaurants," and thinks that's the end of the story. Send it to the brother who still drinks sweet tea because he always has and wonders why 2 o'clock feels like quicksand. Hand it to the friend who wants healthy aging without turning meals into math. Like it if the scenes looked like your house. Subscribe so the next Porch to Kitchen chapter lands in your lap without you having to chase it. And tonight, when the kettle clicks, let the cup be the line between 1 hour and the next. Small lines, kept often, are what make a life steady. Start by drawing a short, invisible line from tonight to 10 mornings from now. It curves through your kitchen and the grocery aisle, clips the edge of a park bench or the bright tile of a big store corridor, loops past your favorite chair by the window, and ends at a bedside table where a quiet lamp and a glass know your name. That line is a routine so small, you can carry it on days when the weather and your calendar ignore your plans. It's where 3 timed cups, green after breakfast, hibiscus after lunch, spice or rooibos after dinner, turn from nice idea into something your blood vessels and your sugar recognize before you even think about it. Nothing heroic, nothing to brag about. Just enough choreography that your afternoons stop needing rescue and your nights stop borrowing from your mornings. On the first evening of this stretch, you do not overhaul a life. You set the stage like a kind host. A kettle sits where you can reach it without searching. 2 jars hold leaves you like, and a third waits for hibiscus petals that look like confetti. A cinnamon stick lies beside a nub of ginger on a small saucer because you use things you see. A glass waits in the patch of light your lamp casts at dusk. That little moon on the counter reminds you to drink plain water before any brew has a vote. You eat what dinner already planned. Grilled fish if it's a fish night. Tofu if that's your lane. Green beans that squeak under lemon, a roasted wedge of cabbage you learnt to love during another season of your life, and you finish with a small mug that smells like a bakery met a woodshop. Rooibos if you have it, cinnamon and ginger if you like, a little warmth, a splash of milk if that makes evening feel like a reward rather than a rule. You stretch your calves at the counter, while the kettle ticks, heel long behind you, knee soft, breath easy. The lamp says goodnight. Your phone charges in the kitchen. Your first success is that nothing felt like a performance. Morning one begins before coffee gets ideas. The glass goes empty because it sits where your hand expects it. The cuff you trust tells you the weather inside your vessels without telling you who you are. Breakfast tastes like a decision you can keep. Eggs folded over finely shredded cabbage and pepper if you're an eggs-mean morning person, or skyer with a spoon of peanut butter and sliced peaches if the bowl speaks your name. Coffee shows up and behaves because it sits next to food, not in place of it. 20 minutes after you put your fork down, a light green tea takes the stage with modesty water, hot but not boiling, a 2-minute steep so it never turns bossy. You sit by the window for those 2 minutes because light is a hormone you can see. You do not chase numbers. You set a rhythm and let numbers notice later. Day 2 meets you the way real days do. You wake a little stiff, you have somewhere to be, and lunch will probably be a bowl you assemble more than a plate you cook. You plan for that at breakfast. You move tomatoes off the center of the table and onto a cameo plate because evenings behave better when potassium doesn't flood late. You put a lemon and a peppermill where the salt shaker used to be king. You tell the late-day cup what it needs to know: no caffeine after mid-afternoon because sleep is the real line you're drawing here. Lunch is beans with cucumber and peppers and herbs and olive oil. Bread if it belongs in your house. And 25 minutes later, hibiscus turns water, a shade you can see from the hallway. If it's summer, you pour it over ice. If it's winter, steam becomes something to watch. You walk the grocery aisles for 8 minutes, not because you need anything, but because calves are pumps that open one-way doors in your veins when they move. That's not exercise, that's engineering. Day 3 is for restaurants, because they happen. You drink water before you go. Not at the table when dinner is telling its own story. You order the grilled or baked thing that came from an actual pan, the vegetables that didn't drown in sauce, the starch in a portion that looks like a fist, not a football. Salt shows up the way a loud uncle does. You smile and keep the evening small around it. When you get home, you wait 40 minutes and set a small spiced tea beside your plate like a last quiet chord. You keep wine to a single glass because you like mornings that don't argue with you, and you let water sit beside it like a sensible friend. You go to bed without feeling like you negotiated with your own life. By day 4, the plan stops looking like a plan and starts looking like the way your house behaves. The kettle becomes part of the dinner soundtrack. The green tea knows its place to the right of breakfast. Hibiscus is simply what follows lunch now, unsweetened and unapologetic, sometimes with an orange slice if you want your tongue to feel indulged without giving your pancreas extra work. The evening cup waits like a promise in the cupboard, and you find that you no longer talk yourself into it. Your hands do the work and your mind shows up after. You write one honest line on a scrap stuck to the fridge. Soup night, hibiscus, hallway walk, steady, not to grade yourself, but to leave a breadcrumb trail for a clinician who will be far more useful when your life arrives in their office as evidence instead of adjectives. The middle stretch, days 5 through 7, is where life tries to break the thread and where you learn what small and pleasant can survive. Day 5 is hot and bossy. The porch looks like a skillet and the flag barely twitches. You drink water early on purpose because your vessels like honesty more than heroics. Hibiscus moves to a tall glass over ice and becomes the thing that keeps a late afternoon slump from demanding sweet tea. You keep salt in proportion when the grill says nice things about food. Your evening cup is modest because your morning pill was a diuretic and you've learned that sleep is medicine. Day 6 is cold or rain slick or just unfriendly to your knees. You invent a stroll inside a big store right when it opens. You push a cart, not because you need paper towels, but because the handle gives you a handrail while your calves move blood the right direction. Your cups appear in the same places at the same times, and they feel like a theme, not a task. Day 7 hosts a backyard gathering, a church supper, or a poker table. You bring something that lets you keep your routine without preaching hibiscus in a pitcher with orange slices and 2 strawberries to perfume it. A platter of cucumbers and peppers, glossy with lemon and olive oil, a bowl of green beans that squeak under breadcrumbs and garlic, more crunch than salt. The evening ends with a small spiced tea on your own counter, not a raid on the pantry because your mouth still wants a story. Days 8 and 9 are for proof, not performance. You take a morning reading on the same scale at the same time twice a week because patterns matter more than any single number. You note whether your socks left bracelets at night and how long those marks stayed. You see that restaurant nights behave when water sits beside wine, when sauces become accents instead of blankets, and when the afterplate cup and a short lap around the block are the last word. You see that deli lunches with pickles and chips ask for hibiscus and 8 minutes of slow walking, while bean bowls with lemon and herbs hardly nick your afternoon. You see that coffee beside breakfast is a friend. Coffee that steals breakfast is a thief. You see your phone's charger in the kitchen, not on the nightstand, and you wake hungry enough to eat the breakfast that makes lunch human and dinner reasonable. None of this is martyrdom. It's maintenance that tastes like dinner and feels like a life. Day 10 is where you prove to yourself that this isn't a challenge. It's a way of being you can keep, even when the world taps the glass. You have a family birthday, or a game that runs long, or a storm that knocks out the neighborhood. The routine bends and doesn't break. Breakfast still shows up beside water and light. Lunch still leans on vegetables and protein and a sane starch. And hibiscus still finishes the hour, even if you drink it while watching rain make rivers down the window. Dinner arrives whenever it can, and you keep your side of the bargain. Salt is a supporting actor, tomato is a cameo, alcohol has a chaperone, and the last warm cup belongs to a plant that won't steal sleep. You stand at the sink, stretch your calves, set the glass and the kettle out for tomorrow like you always do, and let the lamp be the last light. The night feels ordinary in that beautiful way you forgot to wish for. Boring is the miracle you were after all along. None of this changes the fact that life will still try to hand you shortcuts that don't work. There will be days a neon bottle calls itself a fix, and nights a dessert calls itself deserved. That's where nuance lives. Coffee is welcome. It simply needs a plate as a neighbor and a time on the clock that doesn't borrow from your night. Wine can still be a story you tell about a good evening. It needs water at its side and a portion that leaves tomorrow intact. Salt is flavor when it sings harmony. It is mischief when it insists on a solo. Screens are marvels that bring your grandkids' faces into your living room. They are also mischief makers that convince your hormones it's noon at midnight. You don't exile pleasure. You give it hours that respect the work you're quietly asking your blood vessels and your sugar to do. Because routines hold best when they feel like scenes you've already lived. Picture a complete day that refuses to make itself special. Morning arrives as the kind of quiet that makes you notice the hum of the refrigerator. You sit at the edge of the bed for a breath so pressure meets gravity without drama. The cuff squeezes and releases and you jot the numbers like you would the weather. A glass empties in the small moon of your lamp. The window gives you an honest minute of light. Breakfast is not fancy. It's just a bowl that does its job. Coffee sits, civilized. A light green tea arrives 20 minutes later and warms your hands while you watch a sparrow's impossible little life on the fence. You put on shoes with honest soles and walk the hallway or the sidewalk to the corner and back. Lunch is a bowl you know by heart. Beans, cucumbers, peppers, herbs, lemon, olive oil. Bread, if it belongs to you. Hibiscus arrives like a ruby and sits in a glass that sweats a ring on the table if the day is hot. Afternoon is a phone call with someone you like, or a grocery lap where you let the floor be smooth and the lights be bright. Dinner smells like garlic making good on a promise. Green beans. Cabbage that roasts until it tastes like you discovered a secret. A reasonable piece of fish or chicken or tofu, barley or rice or potato in a portion that looks like a kindness. Tomato shows up as a ribbon, not a flood. Wine shows up as one glass, with water holding its hand. 40 minutes later, a small mug of rooibos and cinnamon becomes the closing parenthesis on a sentence you can finish in your sleep. You stretch your calves and smile because your phone is already asleep in the kitchen and will not borrow from your night. The lamp clicks off. Your house knows what to do, and so do you. There are still safety rails, and you respect them without turning the house into a clinic. Caffeine clocks out early, because sleep is the cheapest blood pressure drug you'll ever meet. Licorice root tea, the real kind, is a not in this house, because it raises pressure and nudges potassium the wrong way. If reflux lives with you, steeps are short and cups are warm, not scalding. If you take warfarin, your green tea habit stays steady rather than heroic, and your clinic hears about any change. If you take an iron pill, it keeps a separate hour. If dizziness greets you at the sink, you say those words exactly to your clinician, and they rearrange a dose or a shower instead of you pretending it didn't happen. If pressure surges into dangerous territory and refuses to come down, if chest pressure spreads or breath becomes work at rest, if your face droops or your words tangle or your sugar meter and your symptoms part company with reason, you go now. Calm is not stoicism. Calm is walking through the right door at the right time. It's tempting to look for a medal when you keep a plan this long. What you get is better and quieter. You get afternoons that stop asking for naps you don't want, nights that don't argue with your pillow, mornings that belong to you again. You get a cuff that behaves after dinner and a meter that looks like hills instead of cliffs. You get a plate that tastes like home without exacting a tax at 9 o'clock. You get a routine that continues on bad weather Wednesdays and long caregiving Thursdays and celebration Saturdays because it's small enough to fit in the pocket of any day. You get, and this is not nothing, the confidence to walk into a clinic with 2 honest weeks of notes and say, "Here's what happens in my house," and to walk out with advice that sounds like it was written at your table. That's doctor advice for seniors that works, because it belongs to a life, not a pamphlet. The ending belongs to you, but if you'll let me, I'll give you one more scene to hold. A summer evening lays itself across the block like a blanket. You clear the plates and leave them to soak. The kettle clicks and sighs. A small mug warms your hands while cinnamon and rooibos talk in the air. Someone laughs from the other room and you answer without getting up because this is a house where nothing urgent is happening and that is its own kind of gift. You set the glass where the lamp will find it. You leave the leaves and the sticks where your hand will find them in the morning. You slide your phone into its cradle in the kitchen and close the world with your own lamp, not a glowing rectangle. You pause at the sink, press one heel back, then the other, and feel your calves answer, long and quiet. You go to bed and feel the room keep the promise you made to yourself a week and a half ago with a kettle and a cup and a line you decided to draw from 1 hour to the next. It's not magic. It's a life that remembers how to be steady. If this journey felt like a neighbor talking from a familiar porch, if you could smell the steam and see the glass catching the lamp, if the plates look like your plates and the walks like your walks, then tell someone who needs a hand. Share it with the friend who says, "My pressure hates restaurants but doesn't know there's an hour afterward that can be steered." Send it to the sister who still orders sweet tea without thinking and wonders why 2 o'clock feels like quicksand. Pass it to the brother who wants healthy aging without turning meals into math. Tap like if these small scenes matched your house. Subscribe so the next porch to kitchen story finds you without you having to chase it. A kettle and a cup are waiting tomorrow whether you think about them or not. That's the point. Small, honest things done on purpose. Water, light, a plate with sense, a walk, a warm mug at the right moment are how you live longer after 70 while feeling like yourself every single day on the way there.